there's a lot of people who say you can't heal from shame, and my parts are like, I don't agree.
I'm going to be speaking with Stephanie Mitchell, colleague and friend. Stephanie is level 3 trained. She's a psychotherapist in Australia. She comes to this teaching through having walked the talk. She has been as rigorous in her own healing work as anyone I know. And the way she teaches, the place she teaches from, is informed by lived experience. So she's not just delivering information, she's transmitting a knowledge hard won from her own psychospiritual labors. The course is called Nuance and Attunement. A cohort will begin in the spring. We're hoping to continue offering it at IFS Healers spring and fall, at least here in the West. Those are the seasons, opposite in Australia. I'm going to have a conversation with Stephanie about her course, a little bit about who she is, and why this course is just an incredibly important addition to IFS and realizes possibilities that IFS has always had in a very fulsome manner. Without further ado, welcome, Stephanie Mitchell.
Thank you, David. That was a beautiful introduction.
So maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself. What would help potential students understand a little bit about you, where you're coming from, and how you arrived at this incredibly rich course that you're teaching?
Yeah, I'll probably start with the fact that I have a pretty significant trauma history and various forms of abuse as a child, and pretty volatile family of origin situations. So I've grown up with my own sense of that early developmental wounding and attachment that feels precarious. And I came to mental health through being a peer worker. I identified as someone who was pretty broken and went into the mental health service in Australia under the banner of saying I'm someone who experiences life-altering emotional distress. I worked with people who are using services as a peer. And then from there, I went off on to become a therapist, and have always been really interested in understanding people's experience through a lens of what is it really like for you, rather than just what label you have, what, like the outside signs are. My first place of employment was an organization called the Mental Illness Fellowship of South Australia. And yeah, so it was really at the pointy end of distress. And 75% of their staff have a lived experience of some kind of emotional distress. I loved working there. It was a great place for me to cut my teeth and learn about the psychiatric survivors movement. I learned a lot about people coming through psychiatric services and not having people inquire enough about their experience. So, and realizing people can heal if they have someone who's interested.
So basic.
Yeah, exactly. So that was where I started. And because of that, I didn't really ever come into being a therapist with these are your regular clients and these are the kind of complex clients. I just worked with people who were really having a hard time, and I had good supervision. So I was lucky. And then because of my own sense of feeling too much growing up,
Feeling like
it
you were
was
too much.
I was too much, yes. I really wanted to be with clients in a way that was like, you're not too much, no matter how you show up. And I want to be able to tend to that. Yeah.
To meet that, welcome that.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
welcome it. It makes sense to me, and it's not something that I want to close down or try and help you manage better or stop doing.
The invitation is to be in the fullness of who you are. Learn to ride that horse.
Exactly.
Right,
And
right.
then IFS really brought another layer to that. But I honestly felt quite frustrated with IFS because I loved the model. I loved what it offered and the potential. And I saw people who have really healed in the community. And I just couldn't figure out how people got there. And so I was like, what is the thing I'm missing? And I went to all the trainings, and I went to retreats with Dick Schwartz, and I did my 1, 2, and 3 levels plus another level 2 IFIO, and rubbed shoulders with a lot of different lead trainers for consultation, but the thing that really has made the difference for me to really go, okay, this is the thing that's gonna help me be a better therapist, but also have this experience that everyone's talking about of feeling different inside of my skin is what my parts really wanted. That came through my own healing, but it really didn't start to happen until I was about 5 years into my own therapy.
So, what was missing in terms of, I don't know how to say this. There's the basics that we learn about IFS, and we do learn about direct access, but direct access is a freaking world.
Yeah.
And just because direct access looks like what traditional therapy sometimes is, when we really hold direct access within a IFS framework, but also
Mm.
understanding the wisdom of other traditions that have really explored the inner world of what direct access is, which means really
Yes.
transferential relationships. That was something that was not particularly well developed in the IFS literature.
Yeah, my experience was there was a lot that wasn't covered in the training that you just learn from being on the ground with your clients teaching you and getting good supervision. And so
Mm,
I've tried to not only bring in some of the things that I had learnt through my own healing, which honestly, some days I felt like I was going to the edge of my sanity with the healing that I was doing. And also, I've tried to bring in some of the things that I spent years mastering on my own. And I thought,
mm,
gosh, I wish someone did a course that taught these things.
mm.
So the things that were missing were a focus on the relational field in the therapeutic space rather than a focus on the client's self-energy being the main
The
focus.
self-to-part connection being the primary.
Yes, that's right. Which of course it is in the long run, but some clients can't get there
Right.
initially.
And it's still worthwhile. It's still incredibly worthwhile and important to understand the relational field more fully because it'll only enrich the self-to-part connection.
Yes, I always tell my clients that, they get to have me and their self. Their parts
Mm.
get to have me, myself, and their own self.
And is
Forget.
it fair to say that they get to have you, but you're also an emissary for human community, human relationships. And so they get to have an experience with you that as they develop their own self-connection, they can generalize to other
Yes.
relationships, their partners, etc.
And for me, I always say that what we do here in this relational space is practice for life, right? So
Right.
not only do they have a corrective experience that they can then generalize, but they also get to, we're doing something in this space that then becomes accessible out there.
Right. That's
When they
right.
can tell me, I didn't like that, Stephanie, and I'm like, great, let's hear about it. I want to understand more. And sometimes that's me wanting to adapt, and sometimes it's no, this is still my edge. How are we going to negotiate the relational space with that?
Mm.
Is, oh, now there's a place over there that they can start to do what we practiced here.
I'm a little torn. A part of me wants to go and say, how does IFS bring to what you just described? And the other question I want to ask, we can do that in whatever order, is so what, say more about this course and what questions does it answer? So I'm not sure what
All
field,
right.
and we can, what does IFS, what does that
I
framework
have in what I,
contribute? How does it illuminate or serve what you were just describing in terms of the relational practice?
oh, yeah, this is the magic of IFS, right? Because I'm hearing from a part
Mm,
about what the dilemma is or whatever the person's bringing.
mm,
So whether that's a really tender place that needs to be gotten, or whether it's a challenging part or a part who's in love with me or whatever kind of is happening there, I know
mm.
it's a part.
It's not who they are.
No, it's not everyone inside, not
Right.
their self.
Ah,
And that is really de-shaming,
mm,
and it also helps the client find the link to what it's connected to as well, because that's the other thing that we're constantly doing. I'm using the relational field and using the model to make sense of the part comes in to say and do this because they need something based on what their experience has been
mm.
in the past.
And the IFS also helps the therapist.
Yes.
You want to say a little bit about that as well?
Yes, it helps me because it's not a person, how it feels to me is that there's two
Mm,
things. It's not a personal attack, right? This is a part who is having a response
right,
based on some old experiences
right,
in relationship that are coming into the space
right,
with me, and we can address that part. And there's probably other parts who are devastated, to be honest. I had a client who was in love with me, and after a period of time, we talked about it. I said, "And what's it like to tell me all that?" And he's, "It's embarrassing." So there's a second part, right? So
right, of
part of it
course.
is I'm able to stay unblended because I know this is like
These are
only
all
a part
parts.
who's speaking.
Right.
And the second great thing about IFS is that if my parts do get blended, that I
Hmm.
can just notice that
Right.
and ask them to unblend so that I can just be here in a way that's unafraid and also in connection with a lot
Mm,
of openness.
great. Given all you've shared about your experience, and you're wishing that someone was teaching a course about all of that. Can you say a little bit about what Nuance and Attunement is about and what questions it answers, what needs it speaks to for clinicians,
Yeah.
practitioners? Yeah.
I called it Nuance and Attunement because it's all about using the IFS model. We don't blend it with any other things that other modalities. We're just doing IFS,
Mm,
but we're doing it in a nuanced way that takes what you learned in your level 1, 2, and 3 and finds a way to be so present to your client that you're holding the model here and you're with them without the clunkiness of the model.
say a little more.
Yeah,
What does that look
so
like? Yeah.
what does it look like? Some moments I have this thing that I teach called conversational IFS. And so I know I'm asking all of the IFS questions, but they don't sound like the IFS questions. Other times I'll directly ask a person and they're just talking to me and I'm saying, okay, I get you feel this way and you also feel this way. And I'm wondering, what's your concern if you did do the thing? That's where we're talking about implicit direct access, where I
Right.
know I've
Right.
just basically said, hello, judging part, hello, scared part, hello, this one. And let's just check. And I'm not going to let you know I'm speaking to the judge, but
Mm,
what's the fear if you don't judge yourself?
mm,
That's partly only one of the things that we learn. There's also a big focus on transference and shame and working with really protected systems. I can go through a little bit about what we cover if you want.
I think that'd be a good idea. And also just speak to why that is so important. In IFS, there's such a focus on the self-to-part connection,
Mm.
but why is it necessary to pay attention to the transferential dimension? How does it serve the goal of arriving at a wholesome self-to-part connection?
Yes. That's a big question, David.
So to my mind, when I ask that question, it brings up the issues of relational neurobiology, the phenomenology of
Right.
that world, of
Yes.
attachment,
Yes.
the kind of complex, what we in the old days would call characterological stuff that makes it really hard to unblend, trauma and or attachment related stuff. But if the goal is a self connection, so one can dwell in self in relationship to others in the world, why is the transferential work central to that, to getting
Well,
there?
yeah. The transferential work is essential to getting there because, first of all, we are relational beings. And when we've been wounded in relationship, part of what our parts naturally do is use relationship to push and pull and do all kinds of things in the
Right,
therapeutic space.
right.
And Freud talks about remembering, repeating, and working through that we have this way that our parts essentially, obviously, Freud doesn't use the word parts, but our parts use the transference to help us to turn towards what needs to be known. The other thing that's really important is that when we haven't had a safe enough other, and it feels almost like an impossible thing for us
Mm,
to be able to use the therapeutic relationship to create a space where there is finally a safe enough other. creates such an enormous shift in the part's felt sense of safety to let for the protectors to relax so we can help the exiles. So if
Right.
there's not that relational holding in a way that this is where you have to be really nuanced and really attuned, because if you can't be in the way the client needs you to be in any moment to moment experience, then
In other
the
words, if you
protectors, yeah,
in other
protectors.
words, if you have parts that get in the way of being with how the part is wanting you to be or to be met,
Yes,
if you have
yes,
parts that get in the way of that, then you
yes.
will repeat some of what that person, is trying to repair.
Yes, and so not only does that mean we have to do our own healing work, which is really important, and we have to have a deep relationship with our own parts, and we have to constantly take our U-turns, but we also have to have some information. We have to have some skills. One of the things about my course is I have a lot of demos.
So
So
what
we
are some of the
design,
skills and knowledge that is needed? And when you say skills and knowledge, the knowledge, you're basically describing what is the phenomenology of
yes,
these gnarly relational wounds and patterns. What do we know so that when you walk into this territory, you have a map? You still have to be
yes,
there.
yes.
So what are some of the knowledge that you teach, and what are some of the tools?
Okay. So some of the things that people learn in the course, the knowledges, as you call it, are really understanding why parts use transference and
That's
how we as therapists can possibly ever keep unblended when our clients really want us to get blended. They're doing their darndest to reenact something with us, usually, even if it's good client. If they come in
right.
and try and be a good client endlessly, is that really helping them heal? And so, how do we show up in a way that's very gently bringing attention to self-like parts who come in to maybe not speak because that's the pattern for the client,
Right.
not tell us everything. The other kinds of things are, that's a really good question. The skills that you need. So you need some understandings around what is shame, for instance, and why is it so knotted? But what does it look like in the system? How is it that exiles have shame, and how is it the protectors use shame? And then why is that so intractable? But also, what do we do about it, right? So there's like the pieces around doing your own work and being unblended from your own parts, but there's also some understandings about why the system's set up to be so prone to shame and how you can help. And then also on top of things, there's just little bits of information like it's inevitable that we're going to shame our clients even when we do our best not to. So what do we
Mhm.
do then?
Yeah.
And how do I, as a therapist, not be afraid when I do something that takes my client to shame? And then
Mm.
what needs repairing or what just needs some loving, tending, noticing?
And working with your own parts as a therapist, many of us have parts that are terrified that we will cause harm. And
Yes.
then when inevitably we trigger something that's really intense or difficult, how do we work with our own parts to make space
Yeah.
for that?
The way
Mm.
that I teach is to have people walk away with an embodied sense of confidence no matter what happens in the therapy room. And I have heard back from people, I've had feedback from people that just attending the training, some of their parts unburdened
Can you say more about how that happens?
because they come with assumed burdens because of their therapy training. And
Ah,
then as they listen to what I'm saying about certain kinds of clients that they had opinion beliefs about, that I then back up with not just this is Stephanie's random idea, but
right.
this is how you do it. Here's an
Mhm.
example of a session, and this is the structure of the system and why it's set up that way, and this is how it's going to pull you in, and this is how, and there's just like a
Mm.
sense of A, I don't have to believe what I used to believe about the client, and
Right.
B, I can have a roadmap.
Can you say a little bit about when you talk about shame, you're also drawing from writings on shame that really, even though they're not within an IFS context, they explore the phenomenology of shame. Same with attachment theory and relational neurobiology. You want to say anything about how you draw from those wells of
Yes.
wisdom and bring them into the center of this course.
Yes, this is a deep dive into the theories of attachment theory, interpersonal neurobiology, trauma, and shame. So yeah, I'm there's like about three core textbooks that people are expected to read, and then there's a lot of academic papers. Essentially, what I'm doing is taking the wisdom of the writers and research on shame and attachment theory and interpersonal neurobiology and bringing it over to how does it apply to IFS in the room. For me, I'm less interested in the theory of IFS. I'm much more interested in what does it look like in the moment to moment experience in the room. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I'm going to just think out loud. Again, I think of IFS as an architecture or a foundational structure. There
Mm,
is this thing, we can call it the witness, we can call it self, whatever. Every wisdom tradition knows this. And there's everything else. And there are parts and different kinds of parts. That's a fairly bare bones thing. And then there's simple practices, this power of self in relationship to parts, this great shit happens. Now, when people are really blended, there's a whole world there. And that world has been explored by attachment theory, some of the research on shame, some of the stuff on interpersonal neurobiology, all the neurological stuff, which just allows when we are having a client is super blended with a part or bouncing from one part to another, that terrain has actually been mapped,
mhm,
but it hasn't been mapped within this other foundational structure. So you're basically taking all of this rich research and knowledge and
mm,
setting it in. All right, now here we are within this way of being that IFS has gifted us. And we
yeah.
have all of the stuff that fleshes out the details of things that IFS hasn't necessarily done. And so that's really what you're adding
Yes, that's right.
to put flesh on the bones of some aspects of IFS that have not been so developed until now.
That's right.
Anything else you might want potential students to know before we stop?
Yeah, I think one of the things that my parts want people to know is that they have really wanted to come to a place of full healing. So I have a lot of parts who are very dedicated to coming to a place where I feel so different from the inside out
Mm,
that life feels grounded and full of grace. My life used to be very dysregulated. I was full of shame and there were times when I wished that I could go into a psychiatric ward because I felt so crazy and very afraid. And now that just doesn't happen. Things that used to trigger me are just not there. And then on top of that, there's a lot of just ordinary everyday things that feel a sort of curiosity towards, oh, there's that person's parts. And in the past, that would have made me upset or
mm,
jealous or frustrated or
mm,
angry or some
mm,
other feeling. And now
mm,
it's, oh, that's just their parts and I'm
mm,
here. I've done a lot of therapy in my life. And in the decade of therapy before I came to IFS, I perpetually just felt like I was working really hard to just manage. And I
mm,
don't have to manage anymore. So for me, the training
mm.
is really coming from a part of me who wanted to bring together that my healing has become so deep and so transformational because of the fact that my parts did use the transference as part of the healing, because I have had tenacious parts who are like, we want to deal with all of the shame in my system.
Mm.
So it doesn't, most of us, there's a lot of people who say you can't heal from shame, and my parts are like, I don't agree. I wanted to say, the course is really focused on how do we help clients to fully heal,
That's right.
even
And
clients who,
what are some of the ingredients that are necessary? What
yes,
are some of the phenomenal domains that need to be understood and then traversed? Uh,
yes. There's one thing that I was reading an academic paper last night actually about the therapeutic relationship. He has a term in there that feels really, I wish I could remember it. He calls it like attuned empathic mentalizing or something or other.
oh,
And
interesting.
he said mentalizing is essentially just attunement. but it helps, it's attunement that helps a person think about the sequence of what just happened. And for a long time, I've been talking about how I teach a form of IFS mentalization. I haven't been able to find a better word than that, but for me, the phenomenology bit is at the core of the essence of this thing.
Yeah. It's part of moving things from the autonomic nervous system to the prefrontal cortex, basically. That's part of it, that these can have a relationship. So you have these experiences. You can't even
Yes.
witness them because you need to experience them with someone else witnessing until you can begin to self-witness and then review the sequence so you can see and know what happened. It's basically a very dense unfolding of what we talk about as witnessing. Our parts need things to be witnessed. How do you witness something you can't even have a relationship with?
And when you say that, David, what comes to my mind is it's essentially that empathic and compassionate witness, attuned, compassionate, empathic witness who is the therapist, not only the witnessing, but also past detecting. The
Mm-hmm.
phenomenology of the moment where you slow down enough to go, what just happened? Can we feel it and notice it in a way that, like you said, moves it from back there where it's felt and unknown to known, and
And
we go,
felt.
okay, known and felt. And there are parts who you get to notice, okay, the sequence was, I felt flooded. The sequence
Mhm.
is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts in a row, and how are they all helping? And now that we can see them, how do we maybe get to know each one?
And when we're talking about early attachment, well, dense patterns of trauma, those clusters of parts are so dense, the experiences are so dense and complex that it just takes time and repetition and the kind of attunement, the slowing down, the capacity for parts detection, so that the
And
client can begin, yeah, please.
and the therapists. So when the client's in that state, they need the self of the therapist to be the presence for a while, in my opinion. When you're that blended with a lot of parts and you're getting an experience that doesn't even, it's not fully formed yet, the
Mhm,
therapist clarity,
mhm,
therapist curiosity,
mhm,
the therapist's kind of pace, like we're just here and all I'm doing
mhm,
is going, yes, what's it like?
mhm.
Something is here.
Yeah. So anything
Mhm.
more, any punctuation, any encapsulation, any little anythings you want to say before we
I
stop?
don't know, there's a part of me just at the end that was thinking, is that really obvious or is that not obvious to people?
I was thinking a version of the same thing.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think it's simple, it's obvious, it's easy to forget.
Mm. Especially when
Um,
we've got our eye on the protocol. What's the next step?
even if we don't have an eye on the protocol, when we're talking about such dense, intense moments, unless we are really either far along in our healing or have a ton of information, it's going to be activating for us
Mm.
because these things you're talking about are incredibly intense and things move so fast in a very tight space
Yeah.
that I don't care what model you're using, it's going to take everything you have to create space and quiet to bring in focus and watch the complexity of what's happening with love, curiosity, and
Mm.
patience. And the model helps unless we're preoccupied in using it as a way to take care of ourselves, which is okay, we have a sequence here. But I don't think that's inherent in the model. I think that's we take refuge in protocols because what's in
Mm.
front of us is just difficult.
Mm.
I'm just going to say, I think what you're doing is important. I think it contributes to the evolution or the deepening or realizing more of the potential of IFS because of your journey and the urgency that gave rise to this course. It's really a call to all of us. First of all, to face just how fucking crazy we are inside. And I say that with affection. but also that craziness longs to be met, can be met,
Yeah.
and can enjoy robust and even maybe complete healing. I don't know quite what that means.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're up to here.
Yeah. Like you said, I'm not all the way, but the transformations is so profound that I trust the next however many stages and
Yeah, yeah,
probably lifelong. But what I
yeah, yeah.
mean is the sense of
What's
heart,
possible?
more and more layers of grace, more and
Right.
more layers of compassion inside and outside, and ease. I
Yeah,
never
yeah.
used to have ease, that's for sure.
I think many of us are afraid to go to the core of our crazy.
Yes.
And I think, what you're teaching, how you're teaching it holds a promise.
And
Uh,
can I just say something about crazy?
please.
I personally think if you want to do all your healing, you have to have a willingness to go to the core of your crazy personally.
Yeah,
And that's not to say everyone wants that, by the way.
that's true.
But what is crazy? And what I learned during my time of
Mm.
crazy is just polarized parts. It
All right.
feels crazy because it's muddy and they're all against each other in there, but it's really not.
Mm.
Even my clients who come with voice hearing or paranoia, just polarization.
So that what you just said also speaks to the power of IFS. No matter how dense and crazy it all feels, it's actually structurally pretty simple.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean it's not difficult,
yeah,
but
that's right.
knowing that it's structurally simple can be a real gift. Uh,
It's a gift to me as the therapist, but it's also a gift to my clients. When I see
right.
their dilemma through this incredibly simple lens, and they say to me, "Oh my gosh, I had a meltdown during the week and I did all this, whatever." And I'll go, "Great, this is great information. Let's find out who did that. Who
Mhm.
makes you panic?
Mm.
You didn't panic. It's not some anomalous experience. You had a part who made you panic."
Right.
Yeah.
Very liberating. All right, Stephanie Mitchell.
Thank you.
Thank you.